In June of 2018, 2 years after the PULS nightclub attacks, Orlando police officers responded to a domestic violence call. As officers attempted to contact the suspect, he fired a shot through his door, striking Officer Kevin Valencia with wounds that he would eventually succumb to. The suspect then barricaded in his apartment with his 4 children as hostages. This event, which would last more than 24 hours, proved extremely difficult and required the resources of both the Orlando Police Department SWAT team and their partners from the Orange County Sheriff's SWAT team before finally reaching a tragic resolution. My guests today are Captain Jonathan Bigelow from the Orlando Police Department and Sergeant Chris Eklund with the Orange County, Florida Sheriff's Office to discuss the incident and share their lessons learned. This episode will be dedicated to the memory of Officer Kevin Valencia.
My name is John Becker. For the past 4 decades, I've dedicated my life to protecting tactical operators. During this time, I've worked with many of the world's top law enforcement and military units. As a result, I've had the privilege of working with the amazing leaders who take teams into the world's most dangerous situations. The goal of this podcast is to share their stories in hopes of making us all better leaders, better thinkers, and better people. Welcome to the debrief.
Guys, thanks so much for being here. I appreciate you taking the time to do this.
Absolutely.
No, thank you for having us, really.
Why don't we start with your personal backgrounds? Chris, why don't you tell me about your history? How'd you get here?
Well, actually, I'm kind of 1,000 miles away from where I was growing up. I grew up in Massachusetts. Graduated from college and started realizing after a little short break that it was time to find something real to do with my life. Being from Massachusetts, I didn't really have any relatives who were in the law enforcement world. My parents had moved to Florida a couple of years prior, right when I got out of college. So I decided to come down to Florida and started the arduous search of trying to find a place to work. I'd actually applied at the Orlando Police Department, was summarily denied that position.
We still love you.
Yes, thank you. And being from Massachusetts, I really didn't have a grasp on what being employed by a sheriff's office was, because in Massachusetts it's a process server or work in the jail type of thing. So I never really even looked at the sheriff's office. And I was actually approached by my neighbor, who was good friends with the sheriff of Orange County at the time, asked if I had applied there. I hadn't, so I did. A short period after that, going through the process and things like that, my neighbor brought over his wireless phone and said, "Here, talk to your boss." Next thing I know, I was getting offered a job at Orange County. That was 1999.
Give me context on Orange County. How many deputies? How big is the department?
Right about now, we're sitting about 1,650, 1,700 sworn, probably another 850, 900 civilians. We cover about a population of about 1.4 million these days. It's a 1,003 square mile type of an area. Basically surrounds the Disney area, the Disney corridor type areas like that on the north end. Part of it spans to the south in a different county. So we have all that to deal with, all kinds of tourism and things like that. A wide variety of people coming and going.
Give me context, from a team standpoint. Tell me a little bit about the team.
So the team is, we're a decentralized team. So to say that is to say that we have a part-time contingent. It's made up of 15 operators and some senior leadership. So 2 team leaders, 2 squads of operators, then a lieutenant and a captain. And then we have about another 23, well, actually more like 26 part-time operators who, do another job besides just being on SWAT. And then we have 6 tactical medics that are assigned to us that are deputies. They're not fire or anything. They're prior paramedics and things like that that make up the team.
So full team strength is 40-ish.
Yes.
Got it. John, talk to me about you. Where'd you grow up? Give me the brief history.
Yeah, I was born in Michigan, just outside of the suburbs of Detroit, and moved down to South Florida in the early 90s. And my parents got a transfer there for work. And I attended Florida State University, went there, realized that I guess when I started high school down in South Florida and became a part of the Explorers program down there, that I always knew that I wanted to be a cop. So I went to college at FSU for criminology, and came back, started working in Parkland, Florida, as we all know that was put on the map, several years ago with that whole incident. That was my alma mater. Worked there for a couple of years, and then a buddy of mine from college said, "Hey, are you doing anything?" I'm like, "Well, I'm working here." He's like, "Why don't you come up here and work?" I said, "Okay." So I applied for the Orlando Police Department, and I was hired. I started there just after 9/11 in December of '01. So I've been there ever since, and I'm very fortunate to have the career that I've had so far.
Talk to me about the team.
Yeah, the team is, man, uh, I almost get teared up when I talk about the team because it's such a good group of individuals. We're a part-time team, uh, 45 to anywhere to 45 to 48 operators. We got some techs in there, 2 ER docs that are phenomenal from our level 1 trauma center embedded in our team. Got a lot of resources. I served on the team for 13 years. On the incident that I think we're talking about today is I rounded out my career as a deputy team commander, but just overall, pretty busy team. Metro, or I guess you can say the city jurisdiction of Orlando is, our department size is at the time of 2018 was somewhere in the low 800s, and now 2023 we're almost cresting the mid 900s. So we've grown some size, and we're covering some 300,000 people over 114 square miles, and we got a lot of territory that we're covering. But I'd like to tell people the easiest thing to say when you talk about Orlando, because everybody knows Orlando for Disney and Universal and stuff like that, but our peanut butter is in Orange County's chocolate. That type.
I don't know whether that was a good description or a little too graphic.
I wouldn't have said it.
Well, then take it out. I don't.
Oh no, it's gonna stay. Yeah. So okay, so let's start with the incident. Give me date, give me context. How does this thing kick off?
Yeah, so this is a crappy scenario. I'd like to I guess start by saying on June 11, 2018 that cops are cops, and they do everything with the best of intentions to get the job done and to resolve problems and save people's lives. But on this case, in this scenario, we ended up losing somebody, and one of our few that have been lost to crime and to evil, I guess what you can say. But in the late night of that evening on June 11, as we responded to a domestic call, the officers met with the victim, a female victim, saying that her husband had beat her and was threatening her, and she vacated the apartment where they were staying at the time, and it's just right outside. It's in our southwest area of town, and it's near Universal Studios, just to give some operational direction of where we were in the city. So we were sitting there. They responded to this call, and they realized that they had felony charges. And the one big thing that she had said was, I'm in fear for my 4 children. And the officers that were responding were like, well, why? Okay, so he deprived you of your phone, which gave us our felony, and he beat you, which is a domestic violence thing in the state of Florida and probably anywhere in the United States. Okay, what else? He might have guns. He's on probation for 45 years for arson. And okay. You had all these little red flags. Well, where would he keep a gun? Oh, he would keep it in the car, in a closet, or these are the things. And she gave some of the circumstances, but she kept hitting home about how she was in fear for her children. So the officers, they sought some assistance, and I guess it was a slower night in Orlando that night. So they all rallied up and tried to go make contact with the individual, the suspect, if you will. We're not going to name them, but they were provided some keys. They did some homework, realized that there was no gun in the car. apartment was dark. Now, to lay out the apartment, it kind of sucks because it was I say a standard apartment complex building where you have two different rows of stairwells on a large structure that was 3 levels high. And the room, their apartment, was on the middle level on the second story. And it was deeper off at the parking lot. So they're at the door, and they tried to make contact with the individual to take him into custody. And that's when things went south.
Got it. So initial call is just a DV call that kind of gradually getting more and more red flags as you go on. Apartment building. This is the second floor of a 3-story apartment building, 2 stairs coming up. Kind of describe for me, try to paint a picture of what the layout of the apartment building is. It's a long, straight hallway that all the apartments come off of, or is it more like townhouses?
Yeah, it was a rectangular building as a whole. So on either side, if you just say north and south, you have stairwells that will traverse up all the way on either side, east and west of the actual building, that would bring occupants to those respective their apartments. So then on each floor, you have 4 doors on each hallway. So bottom floor, you have 2 on the left, 2 on the right, go down a little bit, 2 on the left, 2 on the right. And those are the respective the doorways to these apartments. And they're probably about anywhere from 2 to 3 bedroom apartments.
Okay, makes sense. Go ahead.
So it was just the distance from the, I guess the challenge is from the parking lot where, easiest line of travel would be from point A to point B would be park up, walk up, traverse those stairs, get to the second floor, pass a doorway to somebody's apartment, and then go to the target apartment, which was in this case on the right. On the back side of the apartment was sort of like a steep incline of grass and almost like a gully. What would you call that? I don't even know.
It's like a retention area that separates 2 different apartment complexes.
So there's no easy way to just, hey, let's park up here and go here. There's no easy way. Whether you go up one stairwell or the next, you're getting to the same.
Yeah, you're ending up in the funnel no matter what you do, and there's no easy external access.
Yeah, the only difference is if I go up from the parking lot side, I'm not exposing myself to the windows on the side of the target location. So the target location only looked out in one direction, which in this case was, we'll call it the east because it was sort of southeast, but it's the east.
Got it. Okay, so patrol officers get there, they make contact. What happens?
Yeah, so make contact with the victim, get the story, get the keys. They have keys in hand to go inside and try to make contact with the suspect. And they brought troops with them. Knock on the door several times to no avail. Nothing's happening. It's dark, but the car is there, so they don't think that the suspect left with the 4 kids. But they say, hey, let's do our due diligence. So they try to insert the key into the key lock and turn the key, and there's some resistance there. And in this case, I think Officer Valencia, we hear him on body camera saying to one of his partners, saying, I think somebody's holding the lock. All right. So they try again, and there was a command decision made to boot the door, kick the door in. So he reached around, or turned around, I should say, not reached around, but turned around to almost like mule kick the door to reverse, and looking over his right shoulder. And when he mule kicks the door, that's when he was trying to kick it one time, and then the shot rang through the door and caught Kevin over in his face. And bullet wrapped around his head and so dropped him. So
Suspect fired 1 round.
Yeah, suspect fired 1 round right blindly through the door. And
never ceases to amaze me, man. Trained cops will fire 20 rounds, not hit anybody. Suspect fires 1 round through a closed door and 10 ring.
Yeah, it's
terrible. So,
horrible.
Okay, so he goes down.
And the assisting officers, one of our team guys at the time, had had brought his patrol rifle with him. So it's like, okay, you know, not for nothing, but you knew what you suspected something that where you're bringing your patrol rifle with him. And we don't have a policy where we have to ask for authorization to bring our long guns with us on certain calls. So hats off to him for saying, hey, I might need additional weapon firepower. But he had his rifle with him, sees Kevin go down, and he immediately returns fire into the closed door, into the apartment, to the target location. I think he fired about 5 rounds. So he and his thinking, I talked to him after the fact, and Manny says, he's like, yeah, I just, he shot. I was like, I'm going to end this right now and get cover for him because we want to rescue Kevin and get him out of the case, but we can't do that if we're under fire. So it's pretty instantaneous, his reaction. He goes back and says that it's probably the worst decision that he ever made. And I'm not here to talk about, I guess the decision that he made or did not make, but he was fearful that those rounds could have impacted somebody else unintended as the suspect.
Sure, of course.
So, but it serves the purpose, and they at least were able to extract Kevin out of the, further down the hallway towards the landing of the stairwell, the top of the stairwell, where they brought him down into the near the parking lot where they assisted in medical aid and extracted him to the hospital. So that's where we've been. That's where we stood.
So, at what point is it at that point they make a decision to push the red button, get you guys there, and
yeah, the watch commander at the time, after all that, after the radio chatter happened, and shortly after that, it was we're sounding the alarm and the team's coming. So we got the page shortly after. Right about 1:30, we were paged out in the morning. That following morning, so I guess it would be June 12th, right? June 12th. Yep. Which is not a good day, as you like to say. Yeah. Mid-June is not a good day. 2 years prior, we were just dealing with PULS, but something about June in Orlando.
Hot. Hot. One way to say it.
Yeah, it's warm. It's warm. It's definitely warm. We got the page for the call out and said officer down. And that honestly had been the first time that I had received a page saying that an officer was involved in something where we had one hurt and injured and shot, officer down, come across. And I was like, man, this is going to stink real bad.
How long did it take you guys to get on scene and get set up?
From the time the page out, we have always said, hey, we're going to have a 45-minute response time. But the time that page out and the time that we were pretty much deployed after our meeting and team brief and had some assets in place was probably over that, an hour and 15. So we were right about that time, but we're just shy of that.
Is that patrol officers are basically holding a perimeter?
Yeah, the patrol didn't vacate. They held, and they continued their commands, and we took over from there. So,
is the suspect engaging patrol at all? Is he responding? Is he negotiating?
Radio silence from him. One shot, nothing. No movement, nothing.
And no sign of the kids?
No, none. So, obviously, mom is in our custody around the corner. She hears some shots and she's concerned, but after that, nothing. Trying to call, no response.
So what is the next milestone as we're moving through the project or through the problem? What's the next step that happens?
So the problem when we get there, how about that? The problem when we get there is, okay, what do we have? These are our charges. What's the structure? What's the target location look like? What communication do we have with him, if any, which was none? What are we know we suspect we have 4 kids inside that are possibly being held by this. We know we have an officer down that he's willing to shoot through the door to not go to jail. But we were like, all right, is he holding them hostage or what's their status? So we immediately said, okay, well, let's treat it as a hostage situation because we had no other reason to believe it wasn't. And we started deploying assets into, an emergency hostage rescue team. And then we developed a deliberate hostage rescue team. We started doing the perimeter as far as relieving patrol and looking at the status of the occupants surrounding the target location, evacuating them. And then in the midst of that, we came across a apartment on the next stairwell to the north, again, mirroring image of the target location that we were at. And they said, yeah, you can use our apartment. We said, can you leave it unlocked? And they said, yeah, use it all day. We'll be over here, basically. So we just had our deliberate hostage rescue team just running rep after rep after rep of saying, make entry and figure out a plan. They were developing our hostage rescue plan as they went.
And just rehearsing.
Yeah. Rehearsal after rehearsal. I remember initially standing there with them. I was the deputy team commander, I guess the forward team commander at the time, just saying, okay, you guys, team leader, you got it. Start working scenarios. Start working rescue at the front of the front bedroom. Based on the fact that we had a mirror image of the apartment that we were going to, we could say, okay, if the hostages are located here, but the suspect is deeper, and we've accomplished the mission of hostage rescue, now what are we going to do? How does that work? If we make entry and we get 2 officers down, how are we pushing forward to the next, to accomplish the mission to save the additional hostages, so you just keep running scenario after scenario after scenario in a compressed time of, I need you to be ready in 30 minutes. So it's like, imagine having a whole hostage rescue training day of one specific location about small structure, small target location, and saying, I need you to run every scenario possible right now.
Yeah.
With fail breach and officer down.
Yeah.
It sucks.
Yeah, no, but I mean, it's given the choice of having an opportunity to rehearse it repetitively or going in blind, rehearse wins every day.
100%. Well, then you also have, okay, take a breather, switch places with the emergency hostage rescue team, who is just sitting there blind, who have been provided a map of the general apartment layout, saying, hey, in case something happens, be ready to go. Well, what are we walking into? Hey, go take a rep, go walk through, and then we're going to swap back and do more routine. So you just had this constant on and off of teams switching to do and plan and rehearse.
It's a great strategy, though, is, set up a QRF and be ready if something kicks off, unintentionally. But in the meantime, go plan the deliberate. And once the deliberate's planned, put them into the QRF role, take the QRF guys, get them delivered. Now you've got 2 teams that can relieve each other, that, you're giving yourself some options in the future. You're maneuvering in time, right? You're buying a future option of having 2 teams that are prepared for the problem. So what's next? What happens?
So after they kept rehearsing and rehearsing, and we're trying to establish some sort of communication with the suspect, one thing that we looked at was, all right, what are some other avenues of approach? The problem with this structure, and it's just a crappy layout, and it's really not uncommon. It's probably super common across any jurisdiction, is you got one point of entry and one point of exit. It's the front door.
Yeah.
Okay. The intel that we had was, I think neighbors provided this, was they believed that they heard furniture moving. So we were like, okay, so now we're dealing with entry A as pretty much the only point of entry on a second story structure as barricaded. Well, that hinders your deliberate or emergency hostage rescue. Okay, so if it's barricaded, the door's already locked. Are we going to go up there and manual breach it? Well, let's do explosive. Let's try to do a dynamic explosive breach. Well, at the time, the Orlando Police Department didn't have its own explosive breach program for our SWAT team. So we relied on Orange County's explosive ordnance disposal unit. So we called them right away. We also looked at the structure and we said, okay, well, there's windows to the east side of the structure. There's several of them. We could exploit those by going through those. What about ladders? Well, that takes time. Well, how do you break and rake them? Okay, that takes time. So there was just a lot of different options. We were like, oh, well, let's get the Seminole County Sheriff's Office, which is the county just north of us. They have a regional asset with a MARS system or ramping system that would reach up. And they were quick to respond. They came out, and we were like, we looked at the terrain and it was like, that's just not conducive to actually hold the vehicle that would allow us to run up a ramp, break and rake, and make entry through a big ass window, I guess, if you could say.
Yeah, I think just for context, that Mars ramp system sits on top of a passenger van, if you will. So it's a road vehicle with however much weight on top, sitting now on the sloped, wet retention area that just wasn't feasible.
Yeah, that's not going to happen, right? It's going to slide down. It's going to flip over. It's not something you can use as a platform to make an entry.
It's creating a bigger problem than the problem that you already have.
Yeah.
So we said, okay, well, what other assets do we have in the area? And we've always had, well, since my experience has always been a great working relationship with the Orange County Sheriff's Office, specifically with their SWAT team. I mean, Chris and I have known each other. We probably competed each other as soon as I came on, which he's been on longer than I have, but so we knew that they had this regional asset or this asset, at least to their agency, which is a Rook, which is, how would you describe that?
It's an up-armored Bobcat with a lot of great attachments.
Which we've trained on it before.
Yeah.
And they brought it out once they had it and they did their training. They're like, hey, you might need this one day. We'll bring it out to your site and train on it all day. And sure enough. And we were like, man, this is great. And it offers an ability to raise a platform that can deliver 4 to 5 operators, up to a second story level. So it was perfect. And they were like, man, we'll bring it out and we'll drive that thing out wherever we need to go. And it was going to work. And we used it actually to break and rake the large window, which ended up being, hey, that's our backup plan for entry. We're going to deliver these 5, come down, suck up another 5, raise the platform again, and deliver another 5 as they do work.
Got it. So that's giving you now a secondary entry point to either put 2 teams in or, if it is barricaded and in a different direction.
Yeah, as the primary team would be working to say, hey, I need you to, whatever you encounter as far as barricaded door, furniture, you need to be moving men and move that stuff out the way and make entry.
Get more resources.
Get in there.
Got it. And just from a mutual aid context, I think you kind of touched on it, but this was not the first time that you had met Chris, and this was not the first time that these 2 teams had seen each other.
No. We trained together quite a bit as, 2 teams coming together. I think we both probably practice somewhat different methodologies and use different tactics from, we don't
Sure.
work to integrate with each other, but we can certainly get on the same job and assume different roles at the same time if we had to.
Yeah, well, and I think, it's kind of a recurring theme on the podcast is that it's very rare that 2 teams are willing to integrate just because they're not constantly training together. And there are subtle differences in tactics and movement and everything else. But the value of you trusting their operators and them trusting your operators and leadership to where you could divide a problem, even if you're willing to put the other team on a perimeter around you, is in a situation like this where it's going to go on for a while and it's going to get worse. It's invaluable.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Yeah, 100%. It's and I always say this. I'm fortunate enough to at least go around and talk to numerous operators on planning and critical incident management and stuff like that. It's who you're able to call when you need to call. Do you know those people? Don't pick up the phone and be like, hey, we had a problem, with each other. Our relationship was shaky last week, but now I need you. It's like, yeah, they're going to come help, but stop, bury the hatch and move forward. Have those relationships, fostered and growing. And I don't know. I don't know how else to say it other than don't screw your neighbor.
It's trust, right?
Yeah.
In the end, it's trust. I'm going to guess that the explosive breaching component of this was probably you calling Chris or some, two other guys on the team. Hey man, I need explosive breaching. We're en route.
Yeah, that's usually how it works. I mean, whether, up through the years, I mean, I came on the team in 2002, and I've gotten to know so many of their operators just from when I was a part-time guy, in regular work and doing those kind of things, and form great relationships. So it just bleeds over into the team as to what's going to happen after that.
Yeah, it sets the culture.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we had their explosive ordnance unit with us. They make charges. So we said, okay, we're gonna end up wanting to explosive breach this door, and we might end up wanting to have a secondary explosive entry on a wall, of an adjoining wall of the apartment that we occupied to the other side of the target apartment. And we said we also want to use a huge charge to create a portal that operators can walk through, right? So if
that's going from the adjoining apartment into the subject apartment.
Yeah. So if entry A is barricaded, and the breach would go. I have no doubt the breach ended up going. The breach works on the door, but we encounter resistance from stuff blocking our way. Simultaneously, I want another entry point into that through the adjoining wall of the apartment next to it, which we occupied, while also inserting somebody else on the opposite wall, which creates almost like that blue on blue, if you will, blue on green, however you want to talk about that, a friendly fire aspect of, hey, we could insert ourselves by doing that into a crossfire situation. And we started to realize that it was fine so long as we managed our fields of fire, and identifying if this happens this way, you are not responsible for this half moving in.
Yeah. You're just allocating fields of fire, because you're basically allocating a field of fire to eliminate the potential blue on blue.
And if you hear something over here, don't pop your head around the corner to engage, because they're engaged.
Yeah, got it.
So it was I call it a ballet, but it was a pretty intricate plan. And I never had, and this will come into later with Chris's thing, is I never had the ordnance people. They built the charge, they put it on the door, and I said, okay, good, thanks. Is it working? Yeah, it'll work. I said, all right, now take it off the door. And they're, why? I said, that's our only point. We're calling to this person to come to us. And if he opens the door, is it going to cause him to go, well, I don't want to go out to that. What's going on here? And wrap it back in and say, nope, that was our last opportunity at our first chance to end the scenario. So I never had that. So it was an intricate part about, okay, we're going to execute this hostage rescue, go. You put the charge on, back out, go. More diversionary tactics, break and rake of windows, sounds, all sorts of nonsense. It was an intricate plan to say, okay, and they were just sitting there on standby. But I'll hit on one point that you talked about with the relationships. Is the cool part about Orange County Sheriff's Office and their SWAT command staff is we had early on in the morning when we called for our city bus service to come down and act as a rehab, because in June in Florida, in Orlando, Central Florida, it's probably already starting off at 85 degrees in the morning at 5, and it'll get up to 103 quick. So we said, hey, we're going to need rehab for our resources that are on site, meaning cooling station, so that we could cycle operators through just to have a chance to sit down and take a breather and get some AC. Two of their commanders came by, and they sat with us for hours. And they didn't say, hey, you should consider this. What about this? They were just there. What do you need? What do you need? Always, what do you need? What do you mean we do? And we said, hey, this is our plan. This is what we're thinking. Boom, boom, boom. And we laid it out. Like, what do you think? And they were like, man, I don't have anything for you. That sounds like an excellent plan. That's probably what we would do. And we were like, okay, cool. But I guess I tell that story because they were there from inception of sort of like quasi-planning.
Yeah, well, just having the value of an objective opinion from a different team who looks at it differently is I mean, it takes certainly humility on the part of your team to be willing to look at another team and say, "Hey, what do you see here?" But it just speaks to the relationship between the two teams that you're not, sometimes surrounding sheriff's office and city can have an adversarial relationship, or it's them. I think one of the key stories here is that this relationship was so good that they're in with you as you're planning and you're looking to them to kind of just murder your ideas. What are we doing wrong? What are we missing? And I think it also speaks a lot to the culture of the Orange County Sheriff's Department to be willing, put their commanders on site and just tell us what you need. Like we're here to help. That's fantastic.
And I think in our area in Central Florida, we're definitely lucky for that.
Okay, so you got a bus coming, which, I mean, there's another interesting lesson learned there. From the beginning, you guys identified, heat and fatigue as a potential, and a bus is a pretty novel way to keep your team cool
Mm-hmm.
because it holds a lot of people, has really good air conditioning, and there are a lot of them driving around. Was that a pre-existing relationship that you guys had made with the transit company to be like, "Hey, can we borrow a bus?"
Yeah, I mean, what's called Lynx. Lynx is the county bus service. Those administrators, those security personnel that work with that are just top notch. They've always been, hey, what can we do? Prior to this incident, how can we help you? We want you to learn our buses, how to turn them on, how to drive them, how to open the doors if something happens on this bus. So they're just, again, so we've trained on those buses. We know a lot of contacts at that government entity, and they've always been willing to help step up. So for us to call and say, hey, we just need you to bring a bus with a driver down here, and it's just going to sit. And if it sits too long and gas runs out, we need you to bring another bus. And they're like, yeah, okay, whatever.
That's awesome. Okay, so what's our next step here? Team staged. You've got a plan, breaching plan, assistance from Orange County for breaching. What happens next?
Nothing. It sucks to say it, but I mean, attempts to negotiate, attempts to contact. I can't tell you how many times that we delivered throw phones to the front door, near the front door. We ended up deploying listening devices that turned out we suspect to be just inadequate and inept and outdated, that didn't work.
It's a recurring theme. Don't feel bad about that one.
No. So to no avail. Just nothing happening. So we were trying to get eyes and ears into the inside. So then we reached out, well, how do we get eyes and ears into the inside of this apartment? So we said, well, we don't have the technology, but this other multi-jurisdictional that Orange County, Orlando, and several other agencies contribute members to, which is like a narcotics task force, I guess, in the area. They have technical capabilities where they have like pinhole cameras, listening devices, and people. So we said, all right, so we have a charge on the wall, the adjoining wall. The adjoining wall, let's put pinhole cameras through the wall and try to get eyes into the interior. And we called those people out, and they're willing to come. They brought their equipment and their people to do it, because we were like, oh, we're not trained in this. We don't know how to do it, what you need. So you guys do. We'll provide you cover into the apartment that we own. Oh, by the way, you go over there and drill a hole in the wall and insert a pinhole camera. Don't mind the fact that
don't make too much noise.
Don't mind. Yeah, don't make
the
too
last guy that came and knocked on the door. But
yeah,
good luck.
Just
guys.
forget about all that. Do what you need to do. Hats off to them. They did a phenomenal job under the circumstances.
That is a really ballsy tech that is like, yep, no, I got this. I can drill really quietly.
So, and they did it. After several attempts, they were able to get it through. And for anybody to think about, well, I just need you to drill through some drywall and insert a pinhole camera into somebody else's wall. Oh yeah, that seems like probably 5-10 minute task. I think it's better half of an hour.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm like, I'm trying to. So the poor decision that I made was, I'm going to mask your movements, if you will, the sound that you might generate sawing or drilling or whatever. I'm going to mask your movements by exterior sounds from my APC in the sound of, just wailing the siren.
Yeah.
And it was just a bad decision. I was like, we can't hear. Because now, yeah, they're covered, but I can't hear if that action, reaction, counteraction happens.
Yeah.
Like, okay, if he hears something and it causes gunshots, I'm not going to be able to hear it. Now I can't affect a deliberate hostage rescue based on his actions. So it was I don't know. I don't know a good cover sound other than you need to be really quiet when you do that and perfect it prior to actually executing it and see how much sound you're making and to know what you can get away with come time. But we didn't have that. So I was just masking sound. And anytime we would do movements, whether it was the throw phone delivery, whether it was the sawing through the wall, is just wailing the siren. It was probably the worst decision I ever made.
Got it. What would you do now?
I would train on putting an element in some room, in some training environment, and saying, all I want you to do is listen for sounds cutting through this wall. And when you hear something, say, I hear you. I hear you. And then, hey, guys, on the other side of the wall, guys, cut through this wall. If you hear, I hear you, you need to go back and rethink how you're going to do it.
Yeah.
And just train it over and over and over again, because that's going to be your job when I need you. So, hey, you on the one side, you're the suspect. You on the other side, you're the good guy. Do your job.
Yeah. Get your stealth on.
Yep. Yeah.
Got it. So about what time are we at? Give me kind of, approximate timeline here.
1:30, 2:30 deployment, 2:30 to 3 deployment. We inserted those texts around noon. Keep in mind that we swapped out the throw phone, the old throw phone technology, 3 times. And our third time
ever from the suspect.
Nothing.
He doesn't make a noise. He doesn't pick anything up. He doesn't answer the phone. He is just stealth and disciplined.
Yeah, there was some comments about making some posts or trying to contact the media somewhere early on, but that had gone away. It was just nothing. So when you talk about...
And nothing from the kids. No sounds, no childhood sounds, no...
I think there was some, at one point after we had gotten there was some information that the one thing that they did hear was the suspect say, hey, don't go in there. That came over a listening device or something like that. But that was the only, to my knowledge, the only communication they got at all inside the apartment.
Man.
Yeah, so you're talking about 4 young kids, early, ages...
1 to 12.
Yeah, 12 is the max. So are getting up early in the morning, wanting to eat, wanting to play, wanting to watch Barney or, whatever on TV. Yeah, 1, 6, 10, and 12-year-olds. These kids are not going to be silent. And we even commented on that. It was like, okay, I have a 6-year-old. I have a 2-year-old. They're not quiet.
Yeah.
But we don't hear anything.
So
no one hears
is that
anything.
Making you think maybe he's killed the kids already?
There was a lot of talk about that. There was a lot of talk about they're probably already dead. But we didn't want to believe that.
Yeah, it's difficult because you want to rescue the kids and you want to believe they're alive, and that's the whole reason that you're there. And there's nothing to indicate that happened except that they're extremely quiet, which certainly points in that direction. I can see where it's conflicting.
Yeah, so it's 100% conflicting in that she's adamant they're there. We're there to effect a hostage rescue, which we said, hey, this is why we exist, right? To save these kids. And also we're there to say, you just shot our guy.
Yeah.
you're going to jail.
You're going to jail.
You're coming with us. One way or another, you're coming with
Yeah.
us. Which brings up another thing. But in essence, we're at, we just go on and on and on.
Yeah, so you guys, at this point, it's noon. You've been on scene for 10, 11 hours through the middle of the night.
Yeah.
Guys have been
nearing it.
rehearsing. Guys are getting tired.
Several times, the rain came and went, food came and went, water came and went. As a team, as a deputy team commander, you walk up to your team leaders and you go, hey, I need you to really focus on your guys, making sure that they're operationally sound.
Yeah.
I need them here. All right. I know Kevin's, been involved in something. We don't know his status. Focus on the mission at hand. This is the mission. We need to save these 4 kids. Okay. What are we doing, boss? What are we doing, boss? Just, hey, I know time seems like it's standing still, and they're working in the command post to come up with what we can do. We can only plan when the command comes down to say execute, we need to be able to go. So we just need to focus on what we need to do here, which is plan and be prepared. But then as time goes on, you just see life just draining from them.
Yeah.
But you just, we got this. Hey, and I individually walked around and said, are you good? I mean, operator after operator after operator. Are you good? Look me in the eye. I need you. Just no BS. You tell me. No, sir, I'm good.
Yeah, it's an interesting, as a leader, it's an interesting quandary, right? Because like the guys have been there a long time. They're invested in it. They're doing everything they can to be alert and attentive. And the longer you wait there, the less likely it is to pop off, but the more likely it is to pop off. So it's like, I need you guys to be really attentive, even though you've been here for 12 hours. And at any second, this guy may come running out the door, guns blazing. You have to be ready. We may say go on the QRF, but about noon, you're starting to kind of do the math.
Yeah, so now about noon we do, but then also we insert the camera. We get the camera inserted. Finally, we get the inserted camera going after, I think, the second attempt. And that's not a knock on them. But we get eyes in. We see it's dark. We see a ceiling fan spinning. It's totally dark, no movement whatsoever. And okay, so now we know sort of some of the layout of the land. There was a door closed to the master bedroom, which will come into play later with Chris's thing. And we just said, all right, we don't see movement. No one's moving. And that's not right. So 5 hours later, it's all right. Well, you know what? Let's try to get some more eyes inside this place. So we develop a plan based on sort of that entry plan with that rook. We said, okay, well, if you're going to give us the go to insert cameras in instead of the camera balls, we're going to insert some camera balls in this. We're going to take out that big window that we want to use and exploit as a method of entry in case all hell breaks loose and we're not able to make entry A or half B, I guess you can call it. And we're going to take out that double pane 2 window with the rook or that element. So they go up there, and say, okay, take it out and insert the camera. So they do. They go up there and they break out that big ass window up there on that one side. And they insert the camera balls, and they insert 2, and they land right next to each other. Go figure.
Of course.
And one sees the wall, which is awesome. It sees nothing. But one does point down the hallway, which shows it's dark. It's all the doors are closed. So again, nothing moving. But that's around the 5 o'clock hour. And at this point, it's like, okay, again, we use that as doing something to spark a reaction, gains us intelligence, gains us that point of entry. We're prepared, but no reaction, no suspect reaction. No, hey, get out of here. Hey, no shots fired, thank goodness, but nothing.
No drones at this point, no ground robot, no secondary tech.
There was some drones flying on the outside. I think that was all not inside of SWAT type drones. That was more agency level type, command post gathering information.
Got it.
So about right after that, after we gained that entry, or I guess access to that window, and then inserted those camera balls, is shortly after that, we said, listen, we're done. Our people are taxed. We can't stand here anymore. Do nothing. Not that we're doing nothing. We work to work, but that's it. That's where we're at.
Yeah, and at that point, you guys have been there for
It was 16 hours.
16 hours, 15 hours.
15, 16 hours. So we said, hey, you know what? We need to make the call.
So you reach out to, well, Chris's team is already there, basically. So
yeah,
well,
they're there.
I mean,
So
the leadership is there, right?
the leadership's there. I think the team's there. They made the call. And the problem is, okay, guys, we delivered the message of, hey, we did what we could. We're here. We were prepared. We were ready. In your eyes, you may think that we did nothing, but we were ready. But we're transitioning now. So once they got that message, they thought, oh, they're going to come right in. And 5 minutes, I'll be out of here. Little did we know, like almost an hour later, our team is actually moving, because the transition just takes that long. It's kind of messed up. Not messed up in that it shouldn't take that long. It just takes that long.
Yeah. It's just, going out and replacing position by position and handing it off and briefing what they see, and everything else is a lengthy process.
Yeah.
Seems like it should take 5 minutes and takes an hour.
Yeah. So when Chris showed up, I was like, hey buddy, good to see you, but
yeah,
I'll be back. Enjoy.
Yeah, so this was interesting for me. I had actually gotten a call that this was occurring literally right as I was walking out of the gym. My commanders called me and said, hey, this is going on over here. So I drove over, probably parked about a mile away, probably between like Universal Studios and where the target location was, just in a parking lot. For me, I think one of the worst times to be on a call out in Florida is when you're going from nighttime into the morning, that dark to day, and then the heat comes with the humidity. And so I'm thinking that it's going to be a relatively early kind of transition. And I sat in my truck until about 6 o'clock at night when they finally paged us out. One of the things about it is that my team knew what was going on. So kind of instead of guys just off doing random things and getting a surprise call, they sort of knew it was coming. Just nobody knew when.
Yes, but guys are not, they're not going to the gym. They're not going for a 2-hour drive. They're staying close and being ready.
Yeah. So we got the page out, and of course by that time it took me about 2 minutes to go from where I was to the scene. I got to the command post, jumped out of my truck. My lieutenant was there, who I've worked with I came up on the team with the guy, so very good relationship. Basically, he hands me a floor plan that's provided by the complex. He says, here you go, it's flipped. So, opposite direction. And he says, how many people do you need? And so I looked at it real quick. I said, 10. He said, okay, there's really no agency right now, but, this is kind of what we're going to do. And I hadn't had the information about the apartment yet, so I took that floor plan, flipped it over, and drew it in reverse. I'm not a big floor plan guy. Like, I don't like to give out floor plans. Back years ago, guys would have a tendency to figure out the direction they wanted to travel prior to even going inside the door. So, and we've had, I don't know how many bad floor plans drawn, So the last thing I wanted the operators to be thinking about is, well, here I go left. It shows go left, but really I'm going to go right. And, I'm real big into the mindset of the operator, so I didn't want to cloud that in that process.
Makes sense. That's an interesting approach.
So basically, operators started showing up, and we had our team brief, and, snipers were replaced. Our snipers went to their snipers' locations. I had met with John. I think we probably talked for maybe 3 minutes. It was pretty quick as far as the conversation goes. We didn't talk really much about his plan or things like that were going on. And we met actually between the command post and the target location. So we're kind of in no man's land at that point, which is an interesting dynamic because in John's position, he's kind of going back and forth. He's got control down range as a forward commander. You're a lieutenant, but he can go back and forth. When I go down, I stay there. So it's a different, kind of one of those differences we were talking about in the teams and how we function and things like that. But
sure.
So John had told me that they had the apartment. So to get to that walk-through apartment, we had to basically walk by the target location, so kind of literally saying, hey, what's going on, to a bunch of their operators as we're walking to go do that. Our immediate action team had gotten into place and replaced their immediate action team. So that was kind of getting the ball rolling. But now we're going to see the apartment first look. So where John was doing all of these rehearsals for all that time, we're now coming into it.
Yeah,
Fresh eyes for us, right?
we've reset the whole problem, basically.
Right. Yeah, so we're turning back the time, right? So we went up there to the apartment. John was with us. I had one of our EOD guys with us, and we started just looking at the apartment. We do hostage rescue training a lot. We did back then, so we knew kind of the general choreography of what this was going to look like. But it was nice having this apartment that was the exact same layout. So as we went in there and started to look at it, as you walk through that door that, John had mentioned, that one door that goes in, basically it opens kitchen straight, living room sort of straight and left. But right there on the left is the entrance to the master bedroom, which there was information that suggested that he had gone in there. So as we went in there and looked at it, the floor plan in and of itself wasn't difficult. But one of the first things that happened is as you walk into that master bedroom, which was an in-opening door, immediately almost on your left is an out-opening bathroom door.
Oh, so the two doors are in conflict.
Well, they are. But again, it's an out-opening door. And what if the door's locked? And there's information to suggest. So, this guy's probably going to try to put himself in a good position of advantage, which to me is that bathroom if he's in that master suite kind of area. So having that kind of dilemma, one of my breacher was there, and I said, what are we thinking about this thing? And his first question was, well, can we IDC the door? So I looked at the EOD guy. I said, hey, if he's got the baby in the bathroom and we IDC this door, what do you think? And he was like, I said, okay, never mind. That's all I need to hear.
Yeah.
Right. I don't need a full disclaimer.
Yeah, you just need the EOD guy give you he's doing the math and he doesn't like the math look.
Right. Yeah. So, and I'm not an explosive guy, so I'm listening to him.
Yeah.
Right. So then I said, well, ballistic breaching would be great on this thing. Out opening door, we can stay out of the threshold. It'll be quick, so on and so forth. So I make a phone call and try to, that county to the south of us, at the time, all of their patrol supervisors had shotgun breaching capabilities in their cars. We didn't have it on the team. So I made a phone call to try to get it and was given a very definite, no, you can't have that. So I tried to plead my case a little bit, and about the fourth no, I said, okay, we're going to have to get away from this. So I went back to the breacher. I said, okay, if you hit the door with the ram on the doorknob, maybe it'll push the doorknob out of the door. We just pull the door open. Now there's a hole. There's no engagement. And he says, okay. I said, well, give it a shot. So now we're in somebody else's apartment. We're about to put their bathroom door
in somebody else's apartment, destroying their door.
So he lines up on the door lock mechanism comes out, goes right into the bathroom. Beautiful. And the makeup of the door, because it's an apartment interior door, the force of the hit actually folded the door past the door stop on the jamb. So now it's literally stuck on the wrong side of the door jamb.
Oh boy.
So the next plan was, okay, John, I want you to take the ram and throw it through the door and make a port in the door. So that was kind of the plan with that dilemma. I had walked through more of the apartment, gone to the back bedroom, looked in the closet back there. There was a walk-in closet back there, and it was interesting about this that I remember, and I always come back to it, is it was stacked with stuff. I mean, it was just clothes and boxes, and I mean, the door opened, but you weren't putting yourself inside there. You would have literally had to start taking stuff out close from the door and then worked your way to the back if that's what you wanted to do. So that was kind of one of those interesting things about that. So we had established a plan. We train hostage rescue for known and unknown locations. And basically the plan that we had come up with, which, again, not talking to John, our primary entry point was going to be through the wall. We were going to use the explosive breach that was on the wall. The window that they had ported was certainly in the mix with that, along with the walk-through door. But I didn't have a whole lot of information on what was on the other side of that door yet.
Yeah.
So
That's inward swinger, obviously.
inward
Yeah.
swing, yeah. Yeah.
And so we've heard that he's moving furniture.
Right.
It's
So
an
there's
inward swinging
a
door.
potential, right?
Yeah, there may be a giant pile of dresser behind it.
Right. So that wall became the primary entry point, and I had actually worked it to where we were going to do a known location response to the master suite area, because that's where the information was that he was in there. And then I was going to run an unknown contingent through the rest of the apartment to try to get as much access to it as quickly as we could.
So two entry teams, one going direct to the
split
the bedroom, and then the others trying to clear the rest of the
So that wall put us more towards the front side of the apartment, but was pretty central in the apartment, right? So about that time, once we kind of wrapped all that, we moved over to the door, or over to the target, and started kind of, again, now we're relieving the deliberate team, John's deliberate team. And, guys are like, hey, let us leave the parking lot before you do anything. Like this is the conversation we're having,
Yeah, of course.
And, I recognize that kind of stuff because, they've been there 16 hours. One of their cops has been shot, so it's a tough thing to want to let go of.
Yeah,
right?
For
sure. But still, I think as weird as we SWAT people are, those conversations still happen. Like, hey, wait till I leave the apartment, the parking lot,
Yeah, it's also just gallows humor, right? It's just like, you don't know how long it's going to take, but as you're leaving, it's like, God, if these guys go in there and in 5 seconds resolve this, I'm going to hate them.
Right. Yeah. So, like I said, my team got there about 6:30. I started to move over to the target location at now 7:30. Because I knew that living room window had been breached. As I'm walking to the apartment, I had 2 operators grab a dumbbell robot because I wanted it thrown in that window. It was one of the first things because I wanted to get recent eyes into the apartment. So I had 2 operators go around and do that. As they did that, I also called and had the explosive breach put back on the main entry door. I wanted it back there. I understand why John took it off, but I wanted it there.
You know what? I'm sorry. I don't mean to interrupt, but I think I screwed up. I think I screwed up our timeline. I want to go back and I don't mean to interrupt you, Chris.
No, fine. Absolutely.
But I think it should be noted that this event, the patrol event, started on the 10th of June, the late night hours of 10 June of 18. SWAT response was the 11th, early morning of the 11th. So we never made it to the 12th.
Got it. Yeah. So we
Sorry about that.
said it started on the 11th and transitioned to the 12th. It actually starts on the 10th and transitions to the 11th.
Yes. Yeah.
Got it. Yeah, I realized, you guys were up for a long time. They just kind of run together.
Yeah. Sorry.
Okay. So Chris, you were setting us up. You were replacing replacing the charge in the main entrance.
Yeah. So we put that explosive charge on. So now we have the explosive breach charge on the wall. We have the one on the door. And of course we have the rook with that living room window. And if I kind of draw the picture, if you're looking at the backside of this apartment building, if you go from where that master bedroom is on the front side, you basically have a small bedroom window, then the large living room picture window, and then 2 bedroom windows further left, if that makes sense. Because I'm probably going to talk about some windows here, and just to kind of give some context to where I'm talking about.
Walk me through that one more time.
So if you're looking at the back of the building where the target location is,
yes,
from basically where the stairwell is, the breezeway, you have a standard bedroom window. The next window to the left as you look at it is a larger living room window. Then there's 2 windows further to the left that are also definitely bedroom windows. Does that make sense? Kind of draw a
so you're looking like bedroom, living room, bedroom.
Yeah, right.
Or bedroom, living room, bedroom with 2 windows in it.
Yeah, and I only say that just because I'm going to talk about some bedrooms that were getting windows and things like that. So just kind of draw a picture if I can mentally.
Yeah,
but
totally.
So that charge goes back on. We have the plan with the known location, unknown location split through the wall. And that dumbbell robot that we threw in, we were able to confirm that he had essentially taken all of the stick furniture that was in the eating area. So a dining room table, some wooden chairs, some of the other furniture from the living room, things like that, and kind of pushed it up against the door, which was a tight, confined space anyways. I mean, it was a short hallway foyer entry into an apartment that was now jammed with furniture.
Yeah. So
right?
John's suspicions, like their team's suspicion of this,
Yeah.
was accurate. There's stuff
Right.
piled across the door, and the door is not a valid
Yeah.
entry point.
Yeah. So, kind of what was happening simultaneously to that is the Rook team had the platform on, and they put a team of 5 because they wanted to start probing this master bedroom window. So they start going up, and again, with the information that he was in there, they go up to that window, and as the platform raises, they start looking in the windows. They don't see anything inside the window as far as the suspect or any kids or anything like that, but they do confirm that the bathroom door is closed. So kind of draws my attention back to the issues that we had at the walkthrough apartment dealing with that. As they're doing that, there was so we had had this Rook for many years, and we had just upgraded it. And one of the upgrades is that the new platform was larger, but it was also somewhere around 1,000 pounds heavier. And we had probably had it back for a couple of months. And as the 5 operators are up on the platform dealing with this window, basically there's a hydraulic release, which causes the platform to kind of jerk and fall forward.
Oh, God.
Yeah. So one of the operators actually fell, and they ended up extracting him. He had hurt his back. So they
fell off of the platform?
No, he fell on the platform, but the way he fell, it injured his back.
When it's the platform with the shield on it, right?
Yes.
So he falls, basically, he gets thrown into the shield.
Thrown into the shield, yeah.
That'll do it.
So they end up extracting him with his injury, so he's out. And of course, I'm hearing this all play out in my mind. So again, as soon as I get that little brief instance of negativity, like it's not a thing anymore. So now, if there's any consideration of putting operators up into the living room window, my confidence at this point in that hydraulic release with 5 operators on it again and repeating the same thing is not kind of in existence.
Yeah.
So
it's falling off a cliff.
Yeah, right. So now I'm really dealing with that wall and that door entry as my primary thoughts. So they had done that, and there was a few conversations happening outside. Of course, when you get on one of these things, all of your operators come up with every possible idea that's known to man as to how we're going to fix this thing. And again, kind of as soon as there's a little bit of a negative that outweighs the positive for me, like maybe we should do an explosive breach through the floor or the ceiling from the apartment above and just kind of right into the bathroom. Well, what if the ceiling falls on the baby? No, that's not a thing. Right. So I'm kind of playing all these different ideas, getting, bounced off me and things like that. And they put the RAM on the Rook now, and they move over to the far left window as you're looking at it, which is going to go into a bedroom that would be at the deep end of the hallway in the apartment. So the Rook operator, that RAM has 5 cameras on it, 1 up, down, left, right, and straight ahead. And as he pushes the RAM through the window, it actually catches the leg of a set of bunk beds. So there's a set of bunk beds kind of in the corner, and one of the legs basically is going straight down the center of the window, the way it's set up in the room. So the RAM kicks that leg, the bunk beds fall to the floor, the top, and falls down to the bottom. And the operator comes up on the radio, and he tells the command post he's going to be giving him a call. So I kind of give a little bit of time for that phone call to happen. And then I called the Rook operator on my phone, and I said, "You got kids, don't you?" He said, "Yep." I said, "Okay." Probably no sooner than I hung up the phone with him, I get a call from my lieutenant. And that conversation is, "Do you want to go soft? Do you want to go hard?" And I said, "Well, we're going to go hard." He says, "Okay, start putting it together."
So kids at this point are dead?
Not confirmed, but they didn't move, right? So now we're talking life preservation at this point.
Yeah.
So he says, "Okay, start putting things together." And I walked over to my team, and we had talked through this a bunch of times, and I had the talk where I looked at all of them and said, "Who's not ready to do this?" Which they all were. And I said, "Hey, you guys want to go soft? Do you want to go hard?" And they all said, "We're going to go hard." I said, "Good," because that's what I told the lieutenant. So we started putting things together. We had our final assault position, which was going to be kind of at the almost towards the top of the stairwell, going to the second story. And so now we're going to go up, turn right into that adjoining apartment, and then turn left to step through the wall. And then I had a secondary team who was going to come up the other stairwell and be basically responsible for that main walk-through door into the apartment. So now we're kind of about, 8:45 at night. So we've been working this thing for probably 2 hours and 15 minutes or so. Get one kind of final conversation with the command post, make sure everybody's good. I said, yep. And he goes, okay, on you. So I line my team up towards the top of the stairs, give a countdown for the breaches. They go off with just that tiny bit of, separating both of them, then not both going off at exactly the same time. So I give the countdown, I give our call to initiate the rescue. I was the third person up the stairs, and as I turned right into that apartment, for like 2 steps through the threshold, I was completely blind, just because of all the dust and everything from the explosive breach. As I came through, and was able to see, I saw my number 2 operator, who's turned around looking at me, which is obviously not the desired effect. And he says, failed breach. So I said, no way. And I literally moved him to the side and looked around the corner. And it was a breach. But what we didn't know is that the interior of the wall was not like any interior wall I'd ever seen. I mean, it wasn't just 16 inches on center. It was 2x4s, 16 on center with cross pieces and everything else like that. I mean, it was pretty robust for an interior wall.
So it's a structure wall.
Yeah.
Well,
It's a sheer wall.
It's holding like a whole nother level of apartments above it.
Yeah.
too,
And I'm a SWAT guy. I'm not the builder guy. So, so I stuck my head out of the apartment door and I look, and they had a successful breach on the other entry door. The door was literally just it was off hinges, but it was there because of all the stuff that was there. They pulled that out. And right about at that time is when I got on the radio and called the command post. And, you never forget when you tell somebody failed breach on a real life operation. And even they would say there, like, the air just came out of everybody back at the command post. So a couple things that happened. We made the decision that we're going to start moving the furniture out of the way. Some people have talked about just rushing through the furniture and things like that, which it wouldn't have been effective based on what he had there. So they start basically methodically pulling furniture from the other side of the door out into the hallway. The 2 operators that I had go into the apartment first, that were going to be the first 2 through the wall, I basically told them, you guys go downstairs and set it out. You're done for a little while. Of course, they looked at me like all good operators would and said, we're good. I said, that's fine. Just go downstairs. Because, in my mind, they were just about to go through a wall following an explosive breach on a hostage rescue on a guy who would, shot another officer and things like that. And then it was failed. So just like the air came out of the command post, at some point, these guys are going to have a crash too. And I just kind of wanted them to go just away.
Yeah, just before the adrenaline dump. Thank you. Before the adrenaline dump hits them. And
Right.
Yeah.
And, I have no reason to even say that it would have happened, but it was just a thing.
Yeah.
So they started working the furniture, got that pulled out, and that was probably a total time, maybe 20-minute ordeal, something like that. And while that was happening, we had put teams of 2 back on the platform on the Rook, and they were launching 40-millimeter gas rounds into the apartment. Some tri-chamber. I'm somewhat of a fan of, those closed doors with the closet and right angles and things like that, to where you can affect those closets and things like that. So by the time it was over and we had gotten all the furniture out to where we were going to make entry, pretty much every door or every room in the apartment had been affected, with the exception of the hallway bathroom. So we started to make an entry. First thing we came to was the master bedroom door, which was closed but unlocked. So that came open. Actually, I'm sorry. I'm confusing my doors. That master bedroom door was locked and closed. I had called a breacher up to work the door, and this is a guy who has hit thousands and thousands of doors. And this was another one of those times where reality struck, and he literally drew the ram back and threw it at the door while he was running out of the threshold. I've had conversation with that guy after, and it was just, it became a real thing. You know, you hit so many doors and there's no reality. But again, coming back to Kevin being shot,
Yeah.
it became a thing. So that's kind of what really drew my attention into the mindset of operators and things like that over time. The door came open, and that master bathroom door that opened out that we thought was going to be such a problem just popped right open, and there was nobody home. So now we had to go and continue to look through the rest of the house. So we moved up into the living room to a point right where it went into the hallway. The first door on the left was cracked, closed but cracked. The bathroom door was on the right towards the end of the hall that was closed, and then the bedroom door straight at the end of the hall was closed. Before we entered into the hallway, I again had brought one of my grenadiers in, had him put, I think, 3 or 4 rounds of 40 millimeter through the bathroom door. One, to see if we got any kind of a response, to just to kind of fill that final last spot. So we're literally standing in the living room shooting into the bathroom door that's about 15 feet down the hall. So we had no response there. Moved into the first bedroom on the left, another set of bunk beds that was kind of opposite wall. One of the male kids was up top. One of the second male child was on the bottom bunk. They had both been shot in the head. We continued to move down the hall, got into the bathroom. Nobody was there. Made entry into that last bedroom straight, where that initial set of bunk beds had gone down. And that's where we found the 12-year-old daughter and the 1-year-old daughter, both shot in the head. So the only thing we had left at that point was that closet in that bedroom that hadn't been cleared. Operators moved over to it, turned the knob, pushed it open, and it opened about 6 inches, and it was stopped. The operator looked, and it was basically the suspect's foot was stopping the door. I called in a breacher, came in, he worked the hinges, and the guy was self-inflicted gunshot wound to the head. Pretty recent.
Coward.
Sure. But we were certainly in the apartment at the time he shot himself.
Oh, really?
I would guesstimate it was probably the time that we were firing the 40 millimeters into the bathroom, is when he did it. In fact, some of the operators heard a small pop. They thought it maybe was a gas canister or something that hadn't gone off yet. But by all best estimates, it was probably him in the closet. It was a pretty small caliber handgun. I think it was a 32, something like that.
Yeah.
And he was inside that closet. But again, I kind of come back to the fact that thinking about that closet before on the walkthrough, and then finding him in that closet, a
little bit of foreshadowing.
Yeah. And kind of one of the things that I kind of talk about when John and I do this is, from what we got out of this is, when you do these walkthroughs, which are a great luxury, try to look at just the bare walls. Don't see it for what it is, but see it for what it could be, right? So that closet being jam-packed full doesn't mean the closet over there is jam-packed full.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
The neighbor being a hoarder does not mean that the suspect is a hoarder.
Yeah. I mean, it might have been a great place for another explosive charge, thinking differently, potentially knowing he was in there. So, yeah.
So why don't we talk through, because I mean, obviously there's a lot to this. Let's talk through some of the lessons learned here. Do we have any approximation as to when the kids were killed?
I think based on all the, looking back and reviewing some of the CAD notes and stuff like that, when I think pretty much after the initial volley, the shot fired by the suspect, Kevin going down, Manny returning some fire, and them extracting Kevin, then working on him, is calls initially came into the comm center saying, "Hey, there's stuff going on," and our reaction to that was, "Well, yeah, we were there for."
Yeah, there were shots fired.
There were shots fired. That was us and him, and back and forth. what I think they determined was, or they suspect, I guess you could say, is one of the occupants, whether it was below or above or whatever, like a good 4 minutes had elapsed before, hey, I just heard shots in the apartment, like above or below.
Got it.
And it was they described, I think they described it as like a cadence type. I heard a couple, and then I heard a couple.
Yeah. Went into one bedroom, shot both kids. Went in the other bedroom, shot both kids.
You know, and I think even the medical examiner had said they had, you know.
Yeah, you guys never had a chance.
No.
And it was a thing for me, and I know for my guys. I mean, it was apparent that the kids had been dead for some time, right? So
that hit home, I think, with my team. Was we debriefed after the fact, and they were just torn. Well, one, not only because it's like, why did Orange County get to come in and immediately start doing work? And it's like, guys, what are you talking about? That's not our play. That was on them. One, I don't like to say this a lot, but it's I don't feel bad. I guess I do feel bad. We all feel bad for the fact that four kids, you know, lost their life to an evil maniac. But I don't feel bad that my operators didn't have to witness what his operators did.
Yeah.
You know, it's just a whole nother level of just, that sucks
to
deal with.
Yeah.
So imagine being on scene for 17 hours and then you witness
and then you
some of
find
that, you know, which horrible. So
yeah, in many ways it was merciful that it wasn't your team.
Yeah, I said, so we debriefed and they said, you know, a big thing was, well, we didn't get the win.
There wasn't
I'm
one.
like, who said? And I reverted back to some of the early training that we did, where we did a hostage rescue scenario on a kid daycare, and the scenario instructor said, you know, put this scenario together where 10 kids end up dying, and the hostage takers just killed themselves. And we ended that scenario with a deliberate, you know, emergency hostage rescue. And we were like, wait, we didn't even get to kill the hostage takers.
Yeah.
And everybody's dead. What is this? And they were like, he's like, well, who ever said that you're ever going to do that, be able to win like that? So I was like, man, it's deep. It's deep when you realize that. And I think Clint Bruce, who was like, he delivered a lot of speeches, but former Navy SEAL, talks about, he's a former Navy SEAL, and he talked about how we always win. It's not the always win factor. It's not we're always victorious. It's whether you define you are victorious, you're winning as you are victorious, or you realize what you came short of, you fix those problems, and you'll get beat another day, you know, a different way. But so I just said, guys, we were there, we were prepared, we were ready. If we had green light, we would be go. We'd probably, encounter the same problem.
It's an interesting training question. I was with a team recently that they were doing a medical exercise and had a teammate, and they had to medevac the teammate, and they get him to the mock doctor, and the doctor was like, he's dead. And the team was like, why would you do that? I'm like, why? He's like, because that's a real possibility. And they then subsequently had a horrific event.
Mm-hmm.
Oddly enough, the same guy shot very badly. Fortunately, he survived this time, but in the real world. But it's an interesting question for teams that are training, because you do tend to train to victory, right?
Sure.
Because everybody, you want to win.
Yeah, don't kill my guys. Don't kill my guys.
Yeah, yeah. Like my guys all survived, and everything worked out fine. And unfortunately, that isn't always the case. And in this case, there's not much either team could have done. I mean, maybe you could have gotten the suspect a little bit sooner, but he already had a plan that he was going to execute no matter what you did. So it is very frustrating.
Yeah, and I think, always the training, right? I mean, to John's point, I just finished the hostage rescue evolution with my team and set up a scenario, and they weren't winning it. Like, they won it because they had the opportunity to save. We used dummies that, that put out blood and things like that, and it puts it on a clock to how soon you stop the bleeding and things like that.
Oh, wow.
And, so they have the opportunity to win, and that they can stop the bleeding and, get them to greater care and things like that. But they're shot. Like, the victim and the suspect are shot when they get in the room, by design. Because can you now transfer from that thought process of, we always go in, we positive target ID on our suspect, we shoot him, and then we, set up and evacuate the hostage. Well, okay. Can you go in there and transition to medical care? Right. So, because those are very real things too.
For sure. Yeah.
We always do the best we can to try to, cover as much of the structure as we can on these hostage rescues and get operators there and, create dilemmas for the suspect and everything like that. But it's still a period of time. I think there was an incident not too long ago in a bank where there was a hostage rescue and they played it back on body worn. From an explosive breach to the first shot on the suspect was 1.8 seconds, which is pretty good.
That's amazing. Yeah.
In that time, the suspect had 3 victims on their knees in front of him. He was able to shoot 2 of them. So, I mean, it's an interesting thing. The other thing is, I think that we, how do we know when we have a hostage scenario? Yeah, we all SWAT guys. I mean, that's what SWAT teams do, is they're there for hostage scenarios. And, it's a very black and white way to look at it when you say, well, you got to have a hostage and you got to have threats and you got to have means to carry out the threats. Well, kids in an apartment at what point do you make that decision where something has gone wrong here? You know what I mean? So
with their own dad.
Right.
Yeah, with their own father who has not threatened them.
Right.
Who has not said anything.
Yeah.
So you have no threats. There's a weapon in play, but you don't, you obviously know that it's been in use before, right? But, when do you draw that? And I say it to my guys all the time. This is not a black and white world we live in. It's very gray.
Yeah.
So those conversations have to be had with commands and say, hey, listen, we might not have this thing, but have you thought about this thing? You know what I mean? And that's kind of one of the big learning points that I take away from it is, how do you look at this and, is it absolute or is it implied? Things like that. Do I need to have a gun to have means to kill somebody?
Well, and you raise a really valid point, which is, I think it's very easy, like we were saying earlier, training to victory, training to win. It's very easy to create a training scar where this is what a hostage situation looks like, and it always plays out this way. And like you said, 1.5 seconds, shoots 2 victims. Like it doesn't always play that way. And what do you think the best way to resolve that from a training standpoint? What can teams do in training that you think helps to counter that?
Man, that's a good question.
It's definitely a question that I think deserves some thought, but I would tell you that, you can't, we always try to train our teams for the best victory and the best win. And we want to be able to say that our teams are the best. So we create this performance that makes us kind of believe that. But when they come under adversity, and I know that when my team has come under adversity, it's always better on the other side. So I don't know if there's an answer to where you're creating losses and then they come out better. Of course, you don't want them to be so beat down that they don't ever believe in themselves. But there's a fine line between what's reality and what's not. We often run hostage rescue with no port and covers or break and rake teams working at the same time. And it takes forever for the operators to get to that room if they don't know where it is. You got to kind of remind them, hey, we're going to have other assets in this thing. We're just a small group of guys right now running CQB reps for hostage rescue. You don't have those other assets in place that we're going to have that will help us win this thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I don't think I could say more on that. It's pretty good. The scenario sucked. John, when you talk about what are some of the problems that we encountered or how we tailored or, identified shortcomings and stuff like that, we looked at second story apartments, just the target location. Okay, this sucked. We really never trained or thought about this location before. Let's acquire equipment. Let's acquire training and tactics on this specific. So if you could think about the most horrific type of target location, I guess you could say, is like, this is going to suck. Train on that, relying on outside resources. And it's not to knock again, those that came to assist, whether it was the listening devices or the explosive breaching, but relying on outside resources when you have the ability to in-house train those and be able to communicate with those on a tactical level. Hey, stand up your own, and that's what we've done since then. And I think Orange County has done since then as well, is stand up our own explosive breaching program, get that equipment that is necessary. What about those listening devices? Train those people on your own team. And so we don't have to call in those and put those in harm's way that not necessarily we have the time to dedicate that. And then just overall, I think the underlying thing is, man, we stretched our guys way too long into the fatigue factor. We were operationally not ready should the call be said, hey, go, go, go. So that was a failure on our part to say, we got to give this up sooner, so recognize that fatigue factor. And I think now it's max 12 hours, and that's max.
Yeah,
and
so
that,
you set a hard cap.
Yeah, set the hard cap. And that could be 8 hours. I mean, we're in Florida. I couldn't imagine doing this in Wisconsin when it's
cold or
cold. You're looking at a 4-hour operational window of people outside standing there waiting.
Yeah. It's interesting. I interviewed actually the guy that's going to be a keynote speaker at the NTOA tomorrow morning, Bob Kuntz, who's a submarine captain.
Yeah.
And he talked about how there are just certain things they call tripwires that when that happens, we change this. So, if another vessel gets within a certain distance of a submarine, then the submarine has to change course, period. No questions, no ask. It's an interesting question whether there should be a tripwire for teams, because it does also take the emotion out of the situation, right? If you say, LASD SEB was recently on a barricade for 42 hours before they handed it over to LAPD. And the discussion afterwards, well, why'd they hand it over? And the other discussion was, why'd they wait 42 hours? Right?
Yeah.
Like it strikes me that if you're a team commander setting a tripwire for your team, where if we get to this point, we are going to transition the problem. It doesn't matter what state it's in. It doesn't matter, if it looks like it's coming to fruition, we're transitioning the problem.
Yeah. I think we hit on that before. I think when we talked previously that like retribution should not be, no, it's going to be our team that take this guy down.
Yeah.
We're not in the business of retribution, but one point that
may even actually be the tripwire.
And that might be like, hey, you guys are too invested, because of what happened. That might be the tripwire.
Yeah, I was just in a meeting with a bunch of SWAT commanders, and this was a topic that came up.
Yeah, is
you have a good relationship with your local team. One of your guys gets shot. What do you do? And it was split, but there's certainly an argument, and the argument I would make is that if an Orlando officer is killed and Orange County kills the guy, it is easier to defend than Orange County. Sure. Even if the guy needed killing and was going to go the hard way no matter what, it is easier to defend, both from a civil liability and a press standpoint, to say, no, we stood our team down and handed the problem over to a different agency that was not emotionally involved.
Yeah. One thing that I also think that needs to be hit on is we had the ability, we had the luxury, I would say, of having that extra apartment, that mirror image to practice on and all this. And it was almost, I remember saying this to them, guys, this is somebody else's home. Don't damage the apartment. Right? As you walk through,
don't worry, Chris is going to break their door.
Don't breathe. Don't keep the door. Come on, guys. All right. Bad. Hey, we're talking about lives. So if I were to do it again, we had the same setup. We had the same setup for the breaching through the wall. Is the failure on our part was not tell the explosive breachers, hey, put the charge up. All right, you think it's going to go? Yeah. All right, now good. Set it up, ready to go. Now go over to that apartment, cut the wall on that same side apartment wall away. See what you're working
See what's
with.
there.
Yeah, investigate. Oh, well, that's going to cost money. All right, money or lives?
Yeah.
What are we doing? Go do it. And they would probably come back saying, we need to change
and it may not have been the same wall, but I know
It's
cases where they've actually peeled the wall back and then they go to work the target wall and it's concrete on the inside. I mean, but it's just a matter of, you have to look at those things. I would never do another charge like that again and I don't believe that our breaches would not peel the wall back, but it would certainly be a conversation of, hey, let's look and see what the inside of this wall looks like to give us a better idea, So
another thing that I've heard teams do is, especially during the problems that are during the day, is go back and pull the original blueprints. Call Public Works, call the city building department and say,
Sure.
what do we have Are there blueprints available? Because that does give you at least, where there is structure in the building.
Right.
What else did this change for your teams, or do you think other teams should be thinking about?
Well, again, and I talked about it kind of when I was going through the scenario. The mindset of your guys is huge, especially for team leader perspective, and even operators. If your guys aren't somehow locked on, or you haven't seen them not locked on yet, and then you witness that, those are real conversations to be had. Like I said, that breacher hit 1,000 doors, 0 defects. And he's a guy who looks like a breacher. Like he's that guy.
Yeah.
But making sure that there's a real understanding of what's going to come out of this and what the reality is now, right? I have a tendency to tell all the guys on my team, hey, there's always somebody on the other side of the door with a gun. And I tell them that all the time because I want them to be ready. But of course, however many times there's not, then they stop believing me, right? But that's just kind of the idea. And I think that, that's one of the biggest things. And again, that kind of spun me into really paying attention to the operators from a mentality perspective. Like, where are they at right now? Are you really good? If you tell me you're all right, you're probably not good, right? Like they say. The other thing is we immediately went to shotgun breaching after this. You go to these teams, and I've had luxury to visit a lot of teams who have a lot of stuff. And there's always people who are like, well, they have it. Why don't we have it? And basically what I've come up with is people have all the equipment they have because bad stuff happened there.
Yeah.
You look at like the LAPDs or the SEBs or things like that have no wants for any equipment. It's because they have so much happen there, right? NYPD, ESU, same way. They have it all. So it's kind of a double-edged sword. I mean, if you can forecast all the things that you want, that's great.
But I think it's also a place where other teams' lessons learned come in hand. Like it's one of the rules that I play in my day job is we work with so many teams that we see what's working, we see what's not working, and we see that there are certain tools that are they're a one-trick pony. But when you need that trick, like, the shielded platform on a Rook is an example of that, where like, I'm not going to use that every day, but when you need that, like you really need it. And I think I don't think we spend enough time, like you said, forecasting ways it can go wrong. It's an interesting kind of contrast in the culture of SWAT teams, because on the one hand, everybody believes in Murphy, right? Like it's an open joke. Right? Like, I don't care how many times you do something, it's not going to work. That, the Rook, you could have trained with that thing 1,000 times. That platform was only going to release on and off at an inconvenient time. But it is intentionally making yourself uncomfortable, intentionally testing the limits of your training. I had interviewed a SEAL commander recently who said he used to make his guys run high-risk CQB runs at the end of really long days.
Yes.
Like, okay, let's all pull it down. No, we're doing this one more thing right now, and you need to be really sharp.
Because they never happen when you're first waking up and you just had your cup of coffee and things like that. Yeah, of course. And I think, John and I have been doing this debrief, talking about this for 3 years at least.
Yeah.
And, it's things like this where people can kind of get that information. Like, I know I've taken stuff that I've learned and heard in debriefs before and directly applied it to what I'm working with right now, because it dawned on me right then. This is not a win. Like, we don't tell this story, I think, because it's a great scenario, right?
No, it's terrible.
But I think there's a lot that people can take away from it and see John talks earlier about, he calls it a ballet. And when we do the debrief, he actually put a picture of a ballet happening. And I'm like, okay, well, for all of you in the class, imagine there's marbles all over the floor of this beautiful ballet, and that's what happens to us when we take it. You know what I mean? So you kind of read into those what's the worst possible thing that can happen here? And I think we could draw a lot from that, other people's experiences.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I think that's kind of the premise of the whole show, right? Like that's what I'm trying to do with this thing is so many of the decisions you make because you have a paradigm and you recognize, oh, this is like this other scenario, and you can't have too many of those. the ability to look at something complicated and see patterns in it is one of the things that makes great leaders great leaders. And I think it's critical that you are a student of the game and constantly trying to push your knowledge.
Well, and I think that's huge because, we all, as A types, want to be the ones who solve all the problems. I have yet to find anybody who has thought of something recently that hasn't already been thought of. It's happened before. So
I think at the end of the debrief that we do, we really try to hit home. It's like, no matter who you are, no matter how many resources you have or how many training hours or how good you really think you are as a team. And we're not here to say that you're not, but really identify your team status by take that hard look in the mirror and like, are we really that good? Because we had that, we thought we were that good. And then we got handed a problem that sucked. And not that we didn't tackle it, but well, we got challenged. And then train realistically, train hard, train different contingencies, transition, get your technology in order, and just, think of 1,000 ways to have suck happen to you and then train it. Really? So in order to move that operational needle in 2 degrees in the right direction. So
I think that's a really good place for us to stop.
No, because you know what? Kevin was a warrior. I'll tell you that. He hung on, man. He hung on for several more years after that. 2018 was his incident, and he finally succumbed to his injuries. 2021. So I just like to give a shout out to Kevin. We there's a contingency of officers that do an outstanding job. They walk his kid to the first day of school every year since. So, we lost one too early, too soon, but he was a great one. So just like to maybe possibly end it with that.
Absolutely.
And that's where we should stop. Thank you, boys.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.